year. We're expanding, and I'm happy to introduce Heidi Hoffman, our new account manager, who's a lot of you have met, and we do a lot of RAP policies, general liability, workers' comp, so if you guys need insurance for the construction, let us know. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out, everybody. As you know, my name is David McLean. I'm one of the partners with Higgins, Hopkins, McLean, and Roswell, a firm dedicated to representing the construction industry. If you don't know Sherry Roswell or Lisa Dunn, my partners, they're both here today. Say hi to them, good people to know. Today's event should be fantastic. I'm going to do a state of the state. I'm going to provide a brief update on the legislative front, the lack of legislative movement at the state level, what's going on with the local ordinances. And we've got John Covert with the Metro Study to give an overview of what's going on in the market and the construction industry. And then when he gets here, Tom Clark, the Executive Director with the Metro Denver Economic Development Corporation, will provide an update just on the state of the economy, what's going on along the Front Range and throughout the state. So it should be very informative. For my piece of it, unfortunately, I don't have a lot to report at the State House in terms of legislative changes. There was a lot of time and effort put into it this year, primarily driven by Tom Clark and the Economic Development Corporation through the Homeownership Opportunity Alliance. And I would hate to tally up the total number of hours put into negotiating and researching and drafting and redrafting and arguing. It was a tremendous effort, and unfortunately it resulted in no change in law at the state level. It seemed like when push came to shove at the last few days of the legislature, they took a number of attorneys. Luckily, I was not one of them, and essentially locked them in a room and said, don't come out until you have a deal. And finally, it got to the point where it looked like the deal that was on the table, or where this thing was going to stop, potentially did more harm than good, or didn't do enough good based on what was being given up. And luckily, it wasn't my call to ultimately pull the plug and say, okay, that's it. We're not going to reach a deal. Let's just stop talking. And what was on the table at that time, the only bill being considered at that time on construction defects had to do with informed consent. And by the time we heard from the plaintiff's attorneys regarding what they wanted in this bill, it seemed more like misinformed consent. I mean, they essentially said once the notice goes out to the homeowners about taking this vote, the builder can have no contact with the homeowners. Only we can talk to the homeowners, you can't. They wanted to exclude active military on deployment. They shouldn't get a vote. Anybody who is not readily reachable or doesn't respond back to us shouldn't count. So it looked like this 51% of homeowners to approve was 51 minus active military, minus any units owned by a builder or any affiliate of a builder, anybody who's not responsive to mail. But ultimately, it just wasn't a very good deal, and it died. So where we are left now, according to the plaintiff's attorneys, I came across a PowerPoint presentation from the plaintiff's attorneys and one of the experts that does a lot of work with the plaintiff's attorneys. We're left with the tattered patchwork of local ordinances. So I just want to run through and spend a few minutes talking about what that landscape looks like now. I tallied up before coming down here. We've now got 17 jurisdictions, well, some of those are doubled up, 15 jurisdictions, both cities and counties that have enacted their own construction defect ordinance. And it's been a fascinating process. I've got a handout that I'll hand out. Essentially, the way that the local ordinances have shaken out Thank you. There's a couple of components to each of these ordinances, and a lot of them have some similarities. First, starting with Lakewood, kind of the one that led the whole thing off, protect arbitration. One of the favorite tactics of the plaintiff's attorneys before filing a construction defect suit is to remove from the declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions for an association any language in there that would require the association to go to binding arbitration in lieu of filing a case in district court and getting a jury trial. The long and the short of why they do that is juries award more money than arbiters do. So that's been a common thread through a lot of these ordinances, is protecting arbitration. The next one is informed consent, much like the legislature was looking at last year, but stronger than where it ended up before the plug got pulled. Essentially, instead of having the decision about whether to proceed with a construction defect action being made by the 5 members of the Homeowners Association Board of Directors, whatever that number is, after being threatened and controlled by the plaintiff's attorneys, the local ordinances are saying it should be a homeowner decision. You need to provide certain information about the defects, about the claims, about the timeline, the costs, potential outcomes, effect on your property values during the pendency of the action. And then you need to get 51% of the homeowners to agree before you can proceed with an action. There's no opt-outs for deployed military. It's 51%. So that's a common thread through a lot of those. Denver, by the time Denver got around to looking at a local ordinance, they took a little bit different tact and added 2 provisions that up to that point no other jurisdiction had adopted, although some have now after Denver. I have a sheet in front of me, I think Colorado Springs and Fort Collins maybe. But the way Denver looked at it was looking at the building code. And was it last summer, June 3rd of last year, at the Metro Mayor's Caucus, talking about local ordinances, and there was a concern among the local jurisdictions about preemption, and we'll get to that generally in a minute. But one of the comments I made at that was that, there's no dispute, but that local jurisdictions are in charge of their own building codes. There is no statewide building code. It's up to each local jurisdiction to adopt and enforce its own building code. So there's no conflict between how you interpret or apply building code and anything in state law. So if you're worried about preemption, take a look at, including in your ordinance, language about how to use the building. So with that, I'll turn it over to John Cook.
Thank you, David. First thing I want to know is, how do I live the life of Dave Jackson? I don't know if you all noticed, carrying the chair to the front of the room is like watching a mob movie or something. Amazing, right to the front of the room. Amazing. Well, happy to be here speaking in front of you guys this beautiful day in Denver. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what's happening in the current new home building market. For those of you that don't know, Metro City tracks housing activity around the country. We track the 11 county Front Range region here, all new housing activity. So all custom homes and production homes, condos, townhomes, paired products, all the new for sale product our company tracks through a quarterly survey where we go visit every new home subdivision and track every lot and look at every house. So we know how much standing inventory is out there, how many closings are taking place, how many lots are sitting out there, how many foundations are being poured. So I'm going to give you sort of a little bit of a high-level view of some of the stats that we collect to give you a flavor of what's happening in the market today. Actually, it's our opinion in Metro Study that home starts would grow by 20% or greater this year if we didn't have all the impediments in place that the industry is now facing, right? High home costs, construction costs, land costs, regulatory pressure, no condos being built, vacant developed lots that are really constrained in the right locations, on and on and on, right? And the industry is really faced with a lot of issues today, despite the fact that the economy is doing really, really well. Unemployment's now just barely above 3%, as Tom I'm sure will talk about. Employment's really strong, growing at 3% growth every year. Population growth is really strong. In-migration is very strong. We're adding 30 to 40,000 people a year. Just net increase moving to Denver every year. The vacancy rate for the apartments is very low and stable. We all know what's happening in the resale market. We know what's happening with home prices, right? I mean, it's a pretty interesting market right now. We've got a lot of constraints for the home building industry. All right, so I don't want to steal any of Tom's thunder, but I do think it's important to talk about demographics before we dive into what's happening in the housing market. Is that all right, Tom, if I do that?
You go ahead and steal all you want. I steal from
keep
you all the
eating.
time.
All right. So I didn't want to get bogged down into the projected population growth from the state demographer's office that's going to happen by county and within the metro area. I will just tell you that it's significant. Maybe have a guess, by 2040, how many people will live in the Denver metro area? Tom, you can't answer. 6 million?
More than 20.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's about 3.2 million people here today in the Denver metro area. There'll be about 3.8 million by did I say 2040? I meant 2030. Yeah, right. So the question comes up, and we're seeing it today, how do you house all these people that are, I mean, that's births outweighing deaths, but it's also in-migration into the market, right? Which is what we're focused on today, because that's what we need for organic growth. We need job creation, and we need in-migration into the market, because those people need a house, right? Well, we've caught ourselves in a housing shortage, because demographics has pushed so strong into the Denver metro area over the last few years that we've got a housing shortage now. And it's not just the new home market, but it's the apartment market, it's the resale market. So stacked on top of one another, we're really underbuilding and underserving the demand that's out there. So what I'm showing you here, this is the Denver metro area net migration over a 10-year time period by age group. And this is State Demographer's Office data. They've got a great website. If you go on that website, the State Demographer's Office, the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, you can get access to this information really easily. So what this does is shows in that 10-year time period by age group, by 5-year age groups, who's showing up in the Denver metro area. So we've all heard about the strong influx of young millennials that are moving to the Denver market, right? Well, the red bars represent the percentages of those cohorts over that 10-year time period that are moving just to the city and county of Denver. So what we think is happening here, it's not that people don't want to go buy homes, right? So they don't want to not list their home to go buy another home, but in their mind, they're like, okay, well, I can get a great price for this house, but what the hell am I going to buy on the other end, right? So I'm just going to stay. So that's why remodeling is going up. A lot of people are just saying, well, I'll just finish my kitchen or finish my basement and I'll just stay, right? People are kind of stuck. But you would think intuitively that people are putting their homes on the market because all this equity that they've prepared over the last few years will allow them to jump up and buy the next house, right? But the market's really kind of stuck where it's at right now. And that's why we think that the volume of sales is going to stay about where it's at, and maybe even decline. We just don't have the listings in place. Just can't do it. So what's going to happen? Home prices are going to continue to escalate, right? As long as our economy is strong, as long as our wages continue to go up or catch up, and it is in-migration coming into the market where they need a house and they can afford a house, prices are going to continue to go up.